Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our weekly business meeting. I am calling this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, December 2nd, 2019. First item is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will ask Charlotte to lead us.
Very good. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay then, so we'll move on to item C. Oh, by the way, attending are Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Did you,
I didn't hear, well, I just reversed the order a little bit.
do you want to make that change or? Okay,
Go ahead, go
so,
right ahead.
item number 7 will be continued until next week.
So that would be the 9th. 10th,
10th.
excuse me. Okay. And what item was that again? 7?
Number 7,
Okay.
yeah.
That it for changes? Okay then.
I think so.
So let's move on to the consent calendar.
Sure, I move that we approve the consent calendar as listed on our business meeting agenda for December 3rd, 2019.
Second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye. Moving on to payables.
I move that we approve the payables list for the week of November 25th through the 29th in the amount of $498,499.05, along with jury panel payments in the amount of $3,639.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye. And so we've already just addressed, changes to the agenda, so we'll move on to the action items. Item number 1, contract phone systems with Motorola Colworks, KCSO 911. Colin?
Commissioners, thank you. Colin McRoy, Kootenai County Sheriff's Office 911 for the record. This is the same contract as last week, just correcting the listing error from proposal to contract. This is a contract purchase is what we are signing. Again, the total of the contract is $464,855.78. It is a budgeted item within the budget amount.
Okay, thank you.
Okay then. Motion?
I move that we approve the contract for the phone system with Motorola.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye. Motion carried. Item number 2, request to advertise sole source, procurement, QA, Q1 Service Motivations, Inc. with KCSO 911.
Thank you, Commissioners. Lieutenant Crawford, KCSO 911 for the record. Yeah, I believe that I also did print these for you. Copies of the information listed out there was articulated in the letter. There's multiple copies, including one for so we are just adhering to the letter that we submitted for request that of the goal for the center to obtain a certification. The first one in the state to do so is our goal out of that. And in doing so, we're researching the renewal for QA service or quality assurance and quality integrity services for what we have as our priority dispatch protocols in each of the disciplines for law, fire, and medical. It is a pretty big undertaking. We have spent several months researching this through to make sure that we have our ducks in a row proverbially. And outside of that, I'll beg for a little bit of forgiveness because this is my first shot at this. So.
No worries. So, do we already have something like this in place?
We did. We were working with Priority Dispatch up until September of last year, at which time the contract was lapsed. We were unhappy with the returns we were getting through them. They were one of the 3 quotes that we brought into the bid process again, but so we did not renew the previous contract with them at the end of last fiscal year.
Okay. So is this a budgeted item?
It is a budgeted item, and it is well within the money we allocated, and then I've given you up to date as recent as this morning in the document I just handed you with the prorated from January through the end of fiscal year 20, which will put us even further under the allocated budget funded for that. And it was rolled over from 19 to 20.
Okay, so then I just kind of have a process. It's a request to advertise, but it's sole source procurement. So if we request to advertise, does that not mean people can?
My
anybody can
understanding is that the
apply?
2-week notice in the newspaper is the advertising that
Oh,
I'm referring
okay.
to here as part of
Okay.
the sole source process.
Gotcha.
So
Okay,
you're-
it's a
you're-
notification.
Okay, yeah, you're providing notification that it's a sole source procurement.
Correct.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and Motivations is the company,
Yes.
and they actually spell it with an E, M-O-E?
Yeah, the CEO of the program is Maureen Dickman.
Oh, okay.
So MOE for motivations, yes, that is not a typo.
Okay. I'm
Okay.
fine.
Okay, so then when we approve this request to advertise, then you do your 2-week advertising, then we go
Then we
through the
come back for
process.
contract and stuff, yes.
Okay. I'm fine. I don't have any other questions.
Bill? Motion.
Okay, I move that we approve the request to advertise for the sole source procurement QA/QI service.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye. Motion carried. Item number 3, receive request for proposal, hazard mitigation planning 2015, multi-jurisdiction, all hazard mitigation plan, Office of Emergency Management. Sandy?
Hi, Sandy Von Baron with Kootenai County OEM. And this is just to receive requests for proposals to update our 2015 all hazard mitigation plan. Needs to be updated by August of 2020.
Okay.
And do we have any?
Yes. We received integrated solution consulting in response to the RFP.
Okay, so do I need to open anything? Yeah, I guess so.
No.
It's not a bid.
It's a
It's
request.
not,
It's not a bid,
just
it's a
an
request.
RFP.
It's a
Yeah.
request for
Oh, then it's
proposal.
been made part of the record, so that's
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
We're okay then? All right.
Thank you.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
Oh, that's-
Okay, so then do I approve the
You
Yeah, I
acknowledge.
think
We acknowledge the
just
receipt?
acknowledge receipt.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Okay, good. You ready?
Yep.
All right, I move that we acknowledge the receipt of the RFPs for the hazard mitigation planning.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye, motion carried. Item number 4, receive a request for qualification hazardous fuels treatment for Nan Lake, Armstrong Park Area Resource Management Office. Jody?
Yes, we issued a request for qualifications. We received a response from Forest Inland Management. I know that sounds like there was more to that, but that's just.
Does that get an exclamation point instead of a comma?
We're so excited. So
Okay.
you're just acknowledging.
So, I have a question. I know that my family went through this program many, many years ago. Do they offer programs for county property? Because we've got county property that probably could be mitigated.
Yes, and so there is a list of priority projects that have been in the all hazard mitigation plan.
Right, it's part of the all hazard mitigation plan or our community wildfire protection plan. And it is for the public, private. And we're always looking to do fuel breaks, and that's what we would have to look at. It has to do with county. And it also needs to be in the plan itself. So if there's a certain project, we would wanna get with the fire district of jurisdiction and discuss what kind of a project that could be, and then it could be added to the plan if it was something we wanted to do.
Okay, so just like a county employee would say, hey, we have this parcel of land and we want to add it to this program, and they'd write out a little, they'd work with you, write out the,
So what
project.
we do is we do from a landscape perspective, not an individual. So if that individual happens to be in a landscape area that's a high priority, if that area is prioritized by, you know, the area, the highest level of concern to the lowest, then they would then be part of the group that would then be approached in
Okay.
our
Okay.
HFT.
And Commissioner Duncan, I'm not sure when you had that done, but it used to be that we could just do different homeowners and
you might be next door to somebody that says yes and then the other person says
Right.
no. But in this particular case, it doesn't work that way anymore. We do have to have, large fuel breaks to be able to protect the public.
Okay, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, okay.
Long time ago, so, okay, great, that's
Motion?
what I want to know. I move that we acknowledge the receipt of the request for qualifications for the hazard fuel treatment.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye. Was there a change, Jody,
I
that, okay?
appreciate your time, thank you.
Okay. So item number 5, letter of intent, Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, Reed Disaster Mitigation, RMO, and coroner, or for the coroner. So who's speaking to this one?
I'm Warren Keene from the coroner's office for the record.
Yes, sir.
By the end of this week, there is a possibility that we can approach FEMA for disaster mitigation to help with construction of a lab. The actual proposal is not due until mid-2020, but if we're going to apply for a competitive grant application, we have to send a letter of intent in at this time.
So is this, do they normally cover
I was
construction?
just gonna ask you.
It depends on how you word the grant to fit in with their needs.
Okay.
Does RMO want to wait? Have you guys looked into this?
I gathered the information, but
Yes.
Sandy is probably the expert on this sort of a grant, and that's why she's.
Go right ahead, Sandy.
Okay, it's all about if we are, enhancing our capability or protecting infrastructure. This is a possibility. We already discussed it with the Idaho Office of Emergency Management. It just depends on how it all works out. But, in order to get it, we gotta get the letter of intent in, and as well as you need to approve for us to add that project to the mitigation plan that we currently have. Because we cannot go after mitigation funding unless the projects are in that mitigation plan. So we would wanna add this project, and from what we understand, we kinda had the go-ahead with the Idaho Office of Emergency Management. It is, I think it's nationally competitive, so it's, yeah,
How,
very competitive.
Go ahead.
how many hours, Kim, do you think it would take to prepare each step of the way?
I've never been involved in this, so I would not be able to speak to even an estimate. On the email strings that we had on this, I think one of my major areas of concern was the risk assessment that would have to be done. I don't know if that's something that we already have, Sandy, do you know? Or who would perform that? And is that at the point of application?
Doesn't
Julie,
normally
go
the,
ahead.
excuse me, OEM, don't you normally handle mitigation grants?
Mhm.
So regardless, okay, so it wouldn't necessarily
be-
be RMO taking care of it, I mean, they do their
Okay.
normal bits.
Well,
You're right.
we'd probably work together on
Yeah,
this.
Okay.
yeah, that would
Yes.
not
Definitely.
be a joint effort.
Okay,
And so-
but has the risk assessment been done?
No.
Not for this? Okay,
No.
all right. What about ongoing costs? Is this just to construct the lab, but there's no ongoing costs
I
with
have,
the?
I have to refer that to the doctor, Dr. King.
Okay.
Right, and if we're looking at disaster mitigation, it's to get the lab in place so that in the event of a disaster, we can utilize the lab and those sort of things. For ongoing costs, no, this is just a letter of intent to apply. We'd have to look at what their rules are and how that would apply as far as ongoing costs. My first guess is, without looking at the rules, is that there would be no money for ongoing costs.
Okay.
And
So,
it's a 25% match, so
Prac-
that the federal government would provide 75% of the cost,
I was gonna ask you that.
and then 25% would come from the county.
okay, so practically speaking, we would have a lab that would just be shut doors, and then if a disaster happened, then the lab would be opened.
We first have to get it built, and then we can figure out how to operate it.
Okay, I can't do that. I have to know where the ongoing costs are coming from, because I can't spend taxpayer money on something that may or may never be used. So I'm not comfortable going forward at this point, because to me, it sounds like there's gonna be a lot of time expended for maybe just a short chance of getting a highly competitive grant who normally doesn't cover construction. So I can't be in support of spending that much county time on pursuing that, especially when down the road we don't know where ongoing costs are gonna come from.
Bill, thoughts?
I would vote for this.
I see it as two separate issues. The ongoing cost issue is a separate issue. Writing the letter of intent or applying, I see as a separate issue from what it takes to both fund and operate the lab. I don't see that we're necessarily obligated, even if in fact we're chosen. So I think the real effort here just comes down to the actual, what is it, letter of intent or application? Am I stating it correctly?
Letter of intent, yes,
So it's a letter of intent to apply.
Right.
correct.
Jody, you're looking, go ahead.
Well, I just think it's more than just a letter of intent to apply. You are committing, the board is committing to the concept and the construction of a lab, and that's really what you're agreeing to. So if you have a letter of intent, you're basically saying, we're fine with whatever you do, and in my opinion, you haven't done the due diligence to understand what the cost is going to be, and you should have some type of feasibility study done so you could understand also whether or not it would warrant. So those are things that if you really felt in the future you wanted to go for, I would say that you should invest the time in establishing that before you go with a letter of intent. And I'm not aware of any federal federal award that provides for construction.
Can I ask, do we
Go
know
ahead.
the application's deadline?
The letter of intent has to be by the end of this week. The application itself doesn't have to be in until mid-2020.
Oh, okay.
So you're saying that you feel, Jody, that the letter of intent commits us?
Well, you're saying that you're
It's
going
like
down
a letter of
path.
intent.
You're
I
letter of
intend to
intent.
do
We're
this.
gonna do this application, we believe in this
Well,
project.
intention and commitment, though, are two different things in my mind.
Well, you asked me to give them a response, and I was just wanting to allow the
Okay.
board the opportunity.
Well, as far as the feasibility is concerned, and now I'm gonna turn to Dina, because you had run some numbers, right? Do you wanna jump in here?
Well, I read the supporting documentation from the packet for today's meeting, and it looks like there was like two pieces to this. There was moving some cables. So there was two items. There was some cabling that would be moved from 911 to the coroner's area. There's something about like radio cable or something. There was that where the county would pay for the labor and the grant would pay for the materials.
Those are two different topics.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the other part of it was this lab idea, and the verbiage in there said that normally, like Commissioner Duncan said, normally construction is not covered for a grant in that nature, and that the risk assessment, it talked about surrounding states and counties, that they would have to determine that building this facility is something that they would see as like absolutely needed as that there was no other alternative, that this would have to be built. So, I don't know, it sounds to me like what Jody is saying is, we don't know enough to really say, okay, we're gonna intend to do this when we don't even know really what the need is, or what is gonna be covered, because once we commit, then we own it.
Sure.
Sandy, did you wanna jump in here?
Yeah, I would, and then the Dr. King. Kootenai County and North Idaho, the 5 North Idaho counties, have a mass fatality plan, okay, in place. And that plan says what we're going to do in the case of a mass fatality. And believe it or not, a mass fatality can be something as small as 6 fatalities, just depending on the situation. If we have a mass fatality incident, currently we utilize Spokane's coroner.
No, we have to,
Forest Services?
Warren Keene from the coroner's office for the record. The mass fatality plan is set up because Spokane is no longer available to us with over 5 deaths. They are out of the picture. We have it currently set up under MOUs so that we can utilize a mortuary preparation room, refrigerated trucks, itinerant pathologists to come in and help us, up to 20 deaths. Above 20 deaths, then we have to go to the DMORT, which is a federal facility, and then the county is on the hook for everything, and they are very expensive. What we're trying to do is send out a letter of intent that we intend to apply for a competitive grant. It's very competitive, we may not get it, but I have verbal assurances from the 5 northern counties and from Nez Perce that they would love to have a facility here in Coeur d'Alene, so that they don't have to go to Washington. And so it's on me to get those letters and to get that application and get the risk management so that it's appropriate. All I'm asking the commissioners to do is say, okay, Dr. Keene, go, here's a letter of intent that you intend to apply for this grant. It's highly competitive, you may not get it, and once, if you do get it and you do cross all the Ts and dot all the Is, that we have a chance to save the taxpayers of Kootenai County 3/4 of the cost of remodeling and putting in a lab. I don't see any downsides to it, because you can always say, no, we're not gonna go that way, we're not gonna give you the money to match it. It makes perfect sense.
If that's the case,
That
as you
is the
say,
case.
I have no issue. But I think that's not what I'm hearing from, go ahead, Dina.
Are we building a lab? Or are we building?
We haven't
office?
made that decision, and that's not what Dr. Keene is
That's
asking
right.
of us today.
Because
He's
if-
asking to submit a letter of intent to see if we can get the funding, and even if we were approved for the funding, then we'd have to make a decision as to whether or not we want to build a lab. So I'm seeing separate steps here. If this is in any way committing us, and I'm opposed to it, but go ahead, Jody.
I just
because-
want to say that the path that you are on is with the ultimate coming to a lab. So when you do a letter of intent for a grant application to build a lab, that is the path. And so, yes, you could say the letter of intent is just a letter of intent, we intend to apply for this grant, but the end result is a lab. So if the board is saying that if you were to stand at the end result, you're okay with a lab, and that you're looking now for ways to offset the cost, and one of those ways would be for this potential federal contribution, then I believe that's the discussion. Because ultimately, it's to have a grant application for funding to build a lab. So I understand the letter of intent, but I just want to make sure that that path is, from A to B, that's really the path. So that's up to the board to decide.
So Sandy, are these grants available year after year after
There
year?
you go, I was just gonna ask.
Yes, okay. So once again, I am not in favor of the lab. I can't support something that is moving in that direction right now. So,
If I just might add
Yeah, go right ahead.
one thing. The mass fatality plan that was put together, I don't even remember what year it was, 2015, it took a lot of effort and collaboration between the 5 North Idaho counties. Putting a plan together is great, but then executing that plan is a different story. And so just whether you approve it today or not, I say that the commissioners do need to take a look at this, because Kootenai County is growing, and Spokane County is not going to be able to take care of us in a mass fatality incident. At which case, then, what are we supposed to do? We do not have the capabilities. So the doctor's been doing a lot of things, Dr. Keene, in building the capabilities for a mass fatality incident so that we can have what is needed. And he's done a lot of things, and this is another one that he's trying to do. And I understand and agree that the ultimate thing is getting one, and maybe that's not something you think is important, but I just want to say that I, as the emergency manager, do think it's important. We did approve the mass fatality plan, and if we're going to execute it, then we need to have the tools to execute.
so can you, in that part of the mass fatality plan, can you get that to me? Is that, I might have it in print form somewhere,
Sure.
but that would be great.
Okay.
Sounds though this thing has to be in by the end of this week.
Correct.
And
Why are we hearing about it now?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that question, and I don't think we have time to have that discussion by the end of this
between
week.
now and Friday.
Right. Warren Keene from the coroner's office. I'm always looking for ways to finance the lab because no previous board has taken taxpayer money, even though I feel it's essential. It may have to come out of the general fund money, which I doubt that people are gonna take it out of there. And so if there's any way that I can get that construction cost from someplace else, then I think I'm doing the citizens of Kootenai County a great service.
Okay, I keep hearing the word lab, and then there's mass fatality. Could you please, I'm gonna run out of time here, but equate the two for me, or how does one lead it? In other words, if there's a mass fatality, clearly we have bodies, so the bodies are gonna be stored in this facility.
Correct.
Now, now, at that point, are we conducting the necessary forensics here, or is that a later decision, or are we just housing? What are we going with initially?
The idea would be to have the facilities to store more than 20 bodies in the facility, would also have an autopsy table and the ability for a pathologist to come in and conduct those studies, create DNA tests, x-ray tests, whatever needs to be done. But that doesn't mean that you're gonna hire a pathologist, that doesn't mean, it just means you're gonna have the structure available to do it. And if that saves the taxpayers money by putting it on the feds, you know, I don't see the downside.
So would you have to purchase 20 body coolers then?
No,
How many body coolers would you have to purchase?
none.
You have 5 now, is that correct?
No, I have
Three.
3.
Oh, you have 3, okay.
3 for 7 bodies.
Oh,
So then
I'm sorry.
how would you keep the other 13, the temperature you need to for the pathology? I mean, what?
It's like a walk-in cooler at your
Okay.
supermarket, except it houses bodies.
Okay.
I have no problem doing the letter of intent as A only, but A through Z, if I have a problem with, just because we do a letter of intent, doesn't mean we're gonna follow through. That we can't say, whoa, we're stopping right here.
Anyone else? Dina? I see the frustration.
Well, I know that we have a lot of competing priorities at the county, and we're looking at trying to build a building, and that, you know, I don't know what the odds are of a mass fatality. I know eventually one happens, but I know the odds of us needing office space and building a building are pretty good. So that's just, I'm just being Debbie Down and practical, so.
I have to agree with you, but on the other hand, I also have to agree, I can see both sides here. If submitting a letter of intent still reserves for us or preserves for us the flexibility to be able to say, okay, let's assume we've been chosen, and be able to go back and say, okay, fine, we've been chosen, but we've decided not to proceed, then I'm fine with it, because it hasn't cost us anything. And I think that decision comes later. I'm hearing some people in the room saying, no, that's not the case, we're gonna be committed. I'm willing to entertain a motion that does not commit us to anything beyond submitting a letter of intent and reserving the option as to whether we go forward or chosen.
Yeah, I would move that we authorize the submission of a letter of intent for this particular grant.
Before I go any further, I'm gonna call on Lori, I'm gonna put you on the spot, go ahead.
Commissioners,
Please.
I have
Opine.
no. I'm the chief deputy.
You got that? You got the motion?
I got a, was that the whole motion?
That was the whole motion.
Okay, and you seconded it, okay.
All right, I'll second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Nay.
Chairman Philios.
Aye. So the motion is carried for the letter of intent. I hope everybody understands what we are and are not doing and saying. Okay, fair enough. Item number 6, forgive me, lost track here. Fiscal 20-5307 grant application, fixed route operations for the non-fixed route ADA, para ops, oh my goodness. Fixed route and para preventive maintenance RMO. Jody or Kim?
This will be Kim Riley for the record. This is our FY 5307 apportionment. You approved the program of projects on April 2nd of 2019. This request is to apply for the funding for the fixed route, the non-fixed route ADA, the para-ops, and both fixed and para-transit PM, preventive maintenance. Since I submitted this packet, there's a chance that we might have a federal government shutdown again. We can use a prior STIP, the statewide transportation improvement plan, to get our funding for our fixed route operations, which I'm going to need in the second quarter of this fiscal year. I cannot do that with the preventive maintenance, so I'm gonna split the two into two applications instead of one. The dollar amounts are still the same.
So it's entirely grant funded?
It's all grant funded with a local and in-kind match.
Okay.
So the dollar amounts, the total is $1,146,211 in federal, $824,280 in cash and in-kind match.
Okay.
And this is just a normal yearly thing, it's just you're taking a preemptive or proactive step in case there is a federal.
I just don't want to run out of our fixed route dollars is the one where we run a little bit close. And if they shut it down, I can't apply for funds with the other two without our current STIP, which is usually the end of December. And if the government is shut down, then I'm going to be stuck.
Okay. Motion?
I move that we approve the FY 5307 grant application for the fixed route ops.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye. Item 7, 5339 grant application for the transit center.
Is,
Oh, I'm sorry, that was pulled, forgive me. Item 8, request disbursement from patrol drug forfeiture account, KCSO.
I'm Lieutenant Scott Maxwell, KCSO Patrol. Our SWAT team has negotiators on it, the multi-agency SWAT team. And prior to us allowing one to negotiate on a headset, we think we should train them. And so this request is to access some of the federal forfeiture money to send them to training. There's an upcoming second vacancy on the team, so it's approximately $5,500. That includes the class, airfare, lodging, etc.
are we responsible for training all of SWAT members, whether they belong to Kootenai County or another agency?
We split it in half, so Coeur d'Alene City is responsible for training their members, we're responsible for training our members. So these two positions will be Kootenai County members.
Okay.
Okay. Motion?
I move that we approve the request for disbursement from the patrol drug forfeiture account. I'm sorry, it's not to exceed $5,500? Is that?
Approximately $5,500, hotel costs and rental cars, I can't give it an exact, but our last was $2,730 for
Okay.
one individual.
Okay, so,
It's 5,400 and change.
so is that okay, and I guess you would just have to come back maybe if it comes over.
If there's any change.
So don't exceed $5,500.
Yeah.
Yes.
Approximate didn't work like I wanted it to.
Yeah. I don't think it can in this
Okay.
thing, but,
Not
you
to
know.
exceed 5,500.
Not to exceed 5,500. Okay, fair enough. Motion? Oh, you already did it.
I did.
Second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye, motion carried. You bet. Item number 9, request approval unanticipated funding for the patrol boat, Sheriff's Special Account, KCSO. Lieutenant Higgins.
Lieutenant Higgins, for the record, yes. When we were doing last year's budget, or current year budget, fiscal year 20, we weren't anticipating having to replace a boat motor in a boat. We found out in September it needed to be done. This boat we got from Valley County about 7 or 8 years ago, and since then it's gone through 2 motors. One, the Valley County motor that was in it, we had to replace. We put a rebuilt in it, and it is failing. So we need to repower that. We're going to put a new jet pump on it. We're going to beef up the motor a little bit because this is one of our primary patrol boats for the South End of the Lake, plus it is one of our primary boats for dive operations because it is a pretty big platform to work off of. And in order to transport all the divers and gear, it needs to have a little bit of a robust motor on it to go across the lake and get up on planes. So we're going to beef up the motor a little bit, put a new jet pump on it, a high performance jet pump on it, cost is gonna be about $35,000. My hopes are that there will be enough funds in the current fiscal year 20 vessel account to cover these costs. Fingers crossed, we don't have to replace it or do any major boat repairs, we should be okay. However, if we do at the end of the year show in the negative, we may be able to tap into revenues that have come in that are above and beyond what our budget amounts are that would cover that, or we can dip into the fund balances to equal the budget out.
The vessel fund balance.
The vessel fund
The
balance,
vessel
yes.
fund
Okay,
balance.
and then this does not affect paying for deputies?
Correct.
This season?
That's
Okay.
correct, yeah.
Okay, is it true that a pine needle can clog some of these jets?
Yeah, there's an impeller in there, and it's a pine needle. We had a stick, a chunk of a stick that caught in an impeller, and it just shuts the motor down. Yeah. They're a great tool to work off of, but they are very temperamental.
Okay,
All right.
motion.
I move that we approve the request for funding for the jet boat motor and jet replacement through the sheriff's vessel account.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye, motion carried. Item number 10, Master Service Order Form, U.S. Services Agreement, Contract ID F19853-01 with Verizon Information Technology.
Good afternoon,
James?
Commissioners. James Martin, IT for the record. This is a request that we sign a 3-year contract for continuing telephone and continuing telephone and internet services with Verizon. Verizon recently bought out XO Communications, who was our old provider, and during the renegotiation of the prices and appropriation of services, we were able to get a internet speed which is 10 times faster than our current one, which will set us up nicely for if we do software as a service or storing data out into the cloud. So, yeah, I highly recommend. I think it'd be great for the county if we sign this contract. And
Cost, changes, anything?
varies about the same, and the costs vary month to month just by maybe 100 or 200 based on taxes or services for that particular month. But we'll be able to cover it under the existing budget, plus get that enhanced internet pipe that I mentioned.
Understood. Okay.
My only question is, how many holiday ties do you own?
I wore one yesterday and didn't even realize it. Today I liked it.
Somebody dressed you yesterday.
All
Okay.
right.
Colorblind.
I move that we
For
approve
the
the
record.
master service order form, the U.S. Services Agreement, contract ID F19853-10 with Verizon.
-01.
Sorry, -01.
Second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye, motion carried. Item number 11, agreement with the University of Idaho Extension Office and the BOCC. Charlotte?
I'll take
Oh,
it from the beginning.
Leanna, okay.
Leanna Kaiser for the record. This is our annual contract that we renew with the University of Idaho to provide office space and funding for the extension office.
Okay.
Right now they're housed in our elections building. The funding is the same as we had fiscal year 19, which is $147,552, which was approved during the budget season.
Okay. Is that it?
There are no changes to the contract from last year to this year.
Understood.
Charlotte, are you able to connect with the fairgrounds for space for holding some of your classes and stuff if 1A and 1B are not available?
Yes, we actually often work with the fairgrounds just based on their busy booking schedule.
Sure.
And depending this kind of year in particular, there are limited amount of heated buildings that are appropriate for size. But we do often work with the fairgrounds on buildings and options.
And you actually conduct the training there from March on, or May on?
Well,
During the summer months, spring and summer months?
we have multiple programs, so part of the extension office, we have 4-H youth development, we have forestry, we have family and consumer sciences, and we have master gardeners. So of all 4 branches, we have different programming going on at different times of the year. We do a summer 4-H camp which will actually move out, and the fairgrounds has been generous enough to let us use building 19 for the duration of the summer and do youth programming and primarily STEM programming for youth in this county all summer long out of that building.
Okay, cool.
Good.
Motion.
I move that we execute the agreement with the University of Idaho Extension Office.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye, motion carried. And we can combine items 12 and 13, which are Resolution 2019-101 and 102, to classify and destroy records respectively for the Treasurer's Office. Lori?
Commissioners, thank you, Lori Thomas, for the record. We are requesting the authorization to classify and destroy our check batch packets, which are the supporting documentation and reports that we utilize when we are posting our property tax receipts. All of those documents are scanned into an imaging program that's maintained by IS. So if we need to reproduce anything, they're currently termed a temporary record, but our volume, we just are out of space. So I'm requesting from February to September 2019 records to be destroyed.
Okay. Motion.
I move that we approve resolutions 2019-101 and 102 for classifying and destroying records for the treasurer.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Philios.
Aye, and the resolutions are adopted. Public comment? None. 2:41, meeting adjourned. Thank you.